You're not just a good performer, but just an overall good person.
The gunfight itself was dramatic and exciting, but I think we also have what it represented to American history.
When I sit down at the piano, the music takes over.
Today on Spotlight, the COVID science being researched in Missouri. Plus, how the circus is teaching kids to leap over social barriers. And then a snapshot inside the International Photography Hall of Fame. But first, what really happened during the epic battle in Tombstone? It's Sunday and you're watching Spotlight.
The infamous gunfight at the OK Corral gave new meaning to Tombstone, Arizona's reputation as a boom town.
What made gunfight at the OK Corral so shocking to the people of Tombstone, and I think even the participants, was that it was so rare by that point to have this sudden violent explosion.
Authors have been writing about that gunfight from the moment the last shell casing hit the ground, not just because of what happened in Tombstone, but because of what it meant.
I even think the gunfight at the OK Corral spelled the end of the Wild West. It was that last convulsion of violence of the Wild West. The American West started looking towards the 20th century.
What happened in Tombstone in October of 1881 solidified the legends of some of the Wild West's most celebrated figures, including Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday. Now, in his new book, Tombstone, best-selling author Tom Clavin documents in scrupulous detail the fascinating twists and turns leading up to that deadly shootout and the vengeance that followed.
The story has been embellished, fictionalized, and to me, it's a fun thing to go back to say, you know what, let me tell you what really happened. So I wanted to go back to the 1881, 1882 period, find out what was being written at that time. What were the newspapers covering? What were the people writing in their journals and their diaries? And would the story, based on the factual information, be just as interesting? And that's a great joy to me. That's as interesting, if not more so, than the legends.
Did you use materials that other authors didn't use because they couldn't find them that suddenly become available somehow, or you just dug deeper? I assume you went through a lot of stuff that others haven't seen.
One thing that I wanted to draw a lot from is that, after the gunfight at the OK Corral, and as I mentioned, it's not the end of the story, because what followed was a month-long courtroom drama in which Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday were on trial for murder, and probably on trial for their lives. If they had been convicted, they could have possibly been hung for murder. And usually, because most of the stories involving Earp and Holliday and the gunfight end with the end of the gunfight, authors have not often made use of the transcripts. And there's some transcripts that were lost from that trial that were recently rediscovered and are now available at the Tombstone Courthouse monument, I think they call it. And so it's a lot of great testimony, a lot of great eyewitness accounts. And so when you read through all of that, and not that I don't want anybody to think if they're reading this book, they're going to read a trial transcript, because I still want to tell a story. That's still a top priority. But you can make what happened, the events leading up to and the events of the gunfight, more, I think, present and real if you're drawing from actual transcripts and testimony that was taken within days and weeks of the event.
The Earps, everybody knows, Wyatt Earp. And while he was an important character in this, really Virgil Earp is sort of the central Earp in a lot of this story, right?
A big part of the story is that relationship, how they got together because they were going to go into business together, and they were going to help each other make some money and become respectable citizens of Tombstone and be with each other, with their wives, and have this Earp compound together. And their plans went awry. And so there's a poignancy to the book that this was a golden moment for the brothers to do something about themselves and their families, and it went south.
Why has it captured the imagination so much when there were so many other gunfights, obviously, in the Wild West?
I think because you have an iconic figures like Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday involved. I think because of the nature of the fight, because it was a very violent explosion that was uncharacteristic of the American West at that fairly late date, October of 1881. I think because it was the climactic gunfight of the American West. I'm not saying that there was not shootings and there were not deaths by gunfire after the OK Corral, but it really was the climactic moment in the American West. And I think looking back on it now from the hindsight of 140 years, we can see that. So it was just, I think it's the gunfight itself was dramatic and exciting, but I think we also have what it represented to American history.
Well, we're sure sorry you couldn't make it to town, but we do want to let folks know that they can get a copy of Tombstone locally in Webster Groves at the Novel Neighbor. Tom Clavin, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, and I hope that the very next time, maybe when the Tombstone book is out in paperback, I'll be in St. Louis. I very much miss not being able to be there.
Hope to see you then.
Thank you.
For more stories about this epic battle, text TOM to 31996 to watch the full interview or download our Talking with Authors podcast. Follow HEC Media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
A novel drug developed in St. Louis for the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis is being explored as a possible treatment for COVID-19.
So the name of the drug is ATI 450. We started this project back in 2010 as one of the projects when we first initiated Confluence.
Joe Monahan is the Executive Vice President of Research and Development for Aclaris Therapeutics. He oversees the research and development arm called Confluence Discovery Technologies. Having partnered with BioSTL, Confluence operates out of the Biogenerator Labs space. It's in the Cortex Bioscience District of St. Louis, known as one of the fastest growing biotech districts in the country.
We did a lot of preclinical work in cells and animals to make sure this drug did work, particularly as an anti-inflammatory drug. First put it into people, normal volunteers, in 2019 to test the safety.
In 2020, Aclaris is part of a larger clinical trial for people with rheumatoid arthritis. But now another clinical trial is underway to treat patients with the novel coronavirus. That's because COVID-19 can cause acute respiratory distress syndrome, ARDS.
What is it that made you say, this drug needs to be investigated?
Literature that's come out over the past 4 or 5 months suggests that one of the causes of this ARDS syndrome is a hyperactive immune response. So the immune system is triggered when you get the viral infection, but for some reason the immune system goes a little haywire, and this results in an inflammatory state. The data suggests that this inflammatory state and this hyperinflammation is associated with an upregulation of certain proteins that come from both diseased tissue and immune cells called cytokines. And these cytokines could be the culprit in driving this ARDS and the inflammation seen in the lung in COVID patients. And so what ATI 450 does, and the reason we think it could work in rheumatoid arthritis, is it downregulates these cytokines, so inhibits the production of these cytokines. And many of the same cytokines that are involved in the inflammation in an arthritic joint are also involved in the inflammation in the lung of a COVID patient.
The hope is that ATI 450, a drug that doesn't have a name just yet, will help.
We had that preclinical data that suggested that we could block a number of these cytokines, and in blocking these cytokines, the hypothesis would be that we would stop the progression of the infection, we would stop the hyperinflammation, and we would stop progression to ARDS in these patients.
ATI 450 is now being used in a clinical trial for hospitalized COVID-19 patients at the University of Kansas Medical Center in Kansas City, Kansas.
It would be a patient who is moving toward the ICU but has not gotten there yet.
The placebo-controlled study will involve 36 patients. This can lead to a large-scale clinical trial enrolling hundreds of patients.
We want to get the study completed as quickly as possible, get the data, so that if it's positive, we can move on to a larger study to impact more people.
As far as the drug's name is concerned, ATI stands for Aclaris Therapeutics Incorporated.
And the number is 450.
So your drug is known by a number, but at what point will you have a name?
We're in the process of working with a company that helps name drugs to come up with the generic name for this compound. And so we're in the midst of going through naming right now.
You just never know where that spark is going to come from.
We're putting a human touch to everything through the vehicle of art.
We give them the ability to hope.
With COVID-19 testing well underway and the necessary tools in high demand, one group of problem solvers is using 3D printers to produce a needed supply of testing swabs.
And we identified early in the process that the collection kits for testing COVID patients were on short supply.
An engineering lab on the University of Missouri campus is helping MU Healthcare keep up with testing. Michael Apshare watches as the solution is taking shape.
And these happen layer by layer by layer over a 12 to 14 hour period.
3D printers are programmed to heat up resin, molding it into coronavirus testing swabs. The swabs are hung in a heated infrared chamber for curing. Then they're tested. A machine applies force to make sure finished swabs break under the correct amount of pressure.
The reason to break the swabs is to make sure they're not too soft and too bendable, or they're too stiff and brittle.
5 3D printers can produce 1,000 swabs a day. It's a collaboration that's already paid off.
It's really neat to see everyone pull together. We identified a need, we're able to find a solution.
The innovation is helping providers stay ahead of the demand for testing, so the state of Missouri can better track the spread of COVID-19.
While you can't get to the arts, we bring the arts to you. Now, more than ever, HEC Media is St. Louis's home for education, arts, and culture. Go to hecmedia.org for the latest on virtual concerts, virtual gallery tours, author interviews, and much, much more. You can quarantine the artists and the audience, but you can't quarantine the arts. Go to hecmedia.org and bring some joy and hope into your quarantine.
Jazz from Nat King Cole's brother, later on Spotlight.
This is a circus without elephants, lion tamers, or even clowns. Instead, Circus Harmony uses circus arts to cultivate personal growth and encourage social change.
We do it by building character in individuals and building bridges between communities. We help young people defy gravity, soar with confidence, and leap over social barriers all at the same time.
It's been amazing. We've been traveling and meeting new people and making good friendships, and it's just really a family here. It's nice.
Their dedication to teaching the art of life through circus education recently won them the Missouri Arts Awards Arts Education Award.
While our young people are learning to flip, fly, and fling, they also learn important life skills like focus, persistence, and teamwork. But for circus arts to be recognized as arts education, that's really exciting.
You can just be yourself, and you can kind of show off what the human body can do, what you as a person have learned. I've seen myself get braver to try new things, and I've seen myself be less anxious being in front of people. Even if you mess up, the audience will still find it cool.
Things that you think you can't do, you can accomplish at circus. I was afraid of heights before circus, but being an acrobat really helped overcome that fear.
Success in this circus is so much more than acrobatics.
While we have become one of the top pre-professional circus schools in America, we are first and foremost a social circus. So what's most important to us is that we build character in individuals and build bridges between communities. A lot of kids come here and they think they're just learning to flip or to juggle, but they're learning life skills that they'll be able to use whatever they do.
Some life lessons I've learned is teamwork and cooperation. To us, it doesn't matter who you are, what you are. We have a common language of circus, and I think we can show the community how to come together.
One of the ways Circus Harmony exemplifies bringing diverse communities together is peace through pyramids.
When we first became a nonprofit in 2001, we did a partnership between children from a Muslim school on Grand Avenue and children from Central Reform Congregation, a Jewish temple in the Central West End, and brought them together and taught them circus and created a show. Then in 2007, we did our first actual Peace Through Pyramids partnership with a Jewish Arab youth circus in Israel. And we did that for over a decade. It's the last time we were in Israel in 2014, 4 days after we got back from Ferguson, literally exploded. So our response was to start Peace Through Pyramids Ferguson. And now we have a master Peace Through Pyramids program with children from all different schools and places. And then they come here, put on a show, and show the world what can happen when you focus on what connects you instead of what divides you.
I feel in today's world, everybody is focused on what divides them. You know, I'm black and you're white. I come from struggle and you come from, you know, an easy life, and that's what divides us. And when you bring it to the classroom and you say, okay, now I understand the differences that we all share, we put those aside and we just work on what connects us. And just to see all the kids embrace each other's differences, embrace their likenesses as well, was just something that it was amazing.
As we present Circus Harmony's internationally renowned Flying Children, the St. Louis Arches!
The highest level in Circus Harmony is the St. Louis Arches, and when you achieve that, you have to have a certain amount of community service hours. And I think it's really great because it gives you a form of community, and you're not just a good performer, but just an overall good person.
People hear, oh, circus, kids, cartwheels, cotton candy. No, the skills that they are presenting in the ring are absolutely high-level professional skills.
Even if performers don't intend to have a career in the circus, this program provides a strong foundation.
It has established good morals in you, like communication and leadership and friendship and community and self-discipline and such. So it'll really help you in the future no matter where you want to go.
Find out how Circus Harmony is handling camps and classes during the pandemic at circusharmony.org.
HEC Media presents Talking with Authors, the podcast. Your favorite writers and genres, with diverse subjects and styles, like Jenna Fisher with The Actor's Life, a survival guide.
The book is literally about my journey from St. Louis to Hollywood.
With new podcasts dropping bi-weekly. Subscribe to Talking with Authors.
Photography is powerful, and the photographic artists that are represented in this collection are stellar. The International Photography Hall of Fame opens July 8th with Master Works, which is a variety of the best in the IPHF collections, both in photographs and cameras. And we're doing that to celebrate our 55th year anniversary. You'll see works from over 50 artists. IPHF has 5 curators that came together to vote on the collections, and one of our photographic historians in the community did a podcast that we have online, and David Hanlon knows a lot about these images.
Almost every picture in the exhibit is important either aesthetically for a trend that was going on in photography in the 20th century, or representing an important contribution an individual artist made to the medium as terms of a project or a style. The IPHS has a really large photographic collection along with a collection of cameras. The exhibit here features 4 areas that are fairly deep in the collection. One would be photojournalism, where photographers have worked on locations to tell stories, to bring back to an audience. Commercial portraiture and fine art portraiture seems to be another area that's really strong in this particular collection, and it's featured in this exhibit. And then nature and landscape work is another area that certainly is reflected well. There's also a 4th area that melds both the creative side of photography as well as the commercial and photojournalistic areas of photography, and that's the area I kind of call new vision, which is where photographers are trying to show something that you can't see with your eyes, starting with the Edward Muybridge motion studies and the Harold Edgerton bullets flying through cards and balloons and things. Not only does photography show really well things about what's happening in contemporary society, artists doing creative work with nature and landscape, photographing people in a variety of ways and creative ways in portraiture, but then there's other areas of experimentation. The show features really important artists. There's a number of works that you rarely get to see good examples of. There's some works by Edward Steichen, the Greta Garbo portrait, some early images that he did when he was with Photo Secession Group, a view of the Flatiron buildings. Margaret Burke White's images that she did for Life magazine from the 1930s through the 1950s. There's several featured pieces that are really quite important. And then some other artists that are less known, like Maurice Thibard, who was kind of a pioneer in multiple layered exposures during the 1930s and 40s. Since we're so used to now making images ourselves fairly readily, both artistically and on location, and when events happen that you want to record, sometimes people forget in the origins of the medium that a lot of artists really specialized in working in certain areas for many, many years, and then they really allowed people to see the possibilities of photography in a period where people didn't really consider it art, but then with Life magazine and National Geographic and others, and then seeing exhibits starting especially in the 1950s and 60s, that artists that are represented here in this show gave the public more of a sense about how photography could really be seen as an important visual medium for communication and art.
July 8th, we open with Masterworks here at the International Photography Hall of Fame. IPHF is proud to have the sponsors of Emerson, the Regional Arts Commission, and also Collins and Herman. We are open 11 to 4 on Wednesday through Saturdays. Come see us down here at Grand Center.
Happening now at the International Photography Hall of Fame through October 2020. Follow HEC Media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Something happens to me every time I feel that you are near. A strange kind of chemical change goes rushing through me. I know that mysterious glow means you'll appear, and baby, something happens to me in your arms. When I feel you're trembling too, I can tell you've been caught in the spell that I am under. We gaze into each other's eyes in reckless wonder to see that when something happens to me, it happens to you.
Grew up in a musical family. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my older brother, Freddy Cole, great musician. He played piano, played bass, and then my sister Evelyn, she played piano, and then my brother Nat played, of course, and then my brother Ike, he was a phenomenal musician. He could play piano, and I guess it kind of rubbed off a little bit on me. I got the tail end of it.
How was it for you growing up in a family that had so many wonderful musicians and such a great renowned brother of like Nat King Cole? Was that fun? Was that difficult? How was that for you?
I had fun when I was growing up. I had big fun, because I played a lot of sports. Really my first love was playing sports. And so it kind of kept me on an even keel when it came to just doing the things that ordinary kids do. Music is something, believe it or not, that when I'm with
family members, we very seldom talk about any music.
There was just so much history about your brother that I just wondered how it was for you as his brother.
Well, I can't say it was bad because so many people loved him. But it's kind of rough being a youngster and being in this business to have a name. You know, my name was always Nat Cole's brother. You know, and that can get kind of annoying after a while, but I've learned to muddle through it, and so I've made it on this side of it, so I don't worry about it anymore.
It's interesting for me that you chose to do the very thing of playing the piano and singing and doing so with a small group.
Well, if I could do something better, I would do it. No, but when I sit down at the piano, as most musicians would think, all of these other problems that you're talking about, they just go away. The music takes over, you know, and that's one of the saving graces of being able to be a musician. You can just shut the world out and play music. Something happens to me every time I feel that you are near. A strange kind of chemical change goes rushing through me. I know that mysterious glow means you'll appear, and baby, something happens to me in your arms when I feel you're trembling too. I can tell you've been caught in a spell that I'm under. We gaze into each other's eyes in reckless wonder to see that when something happens to me, it happens to you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for watching Spotlight. You can see all of these stories again at hecmedia.org. Join us next week at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.